welcome to Heart Shaped Box, the podcast. This week we have the pleasure of having vocalist Stephen MacConville from the band Confessions of a Traitor. Hi, Stephen, you okay?
I'm good, mate. Thank you.
I didn't realise how much of a tongue twister that would be at the end. At that
And that comes back to when we write song titles and all the boys are like, it's got to be short because we've got a long name. And I'm like, no, I want to create elaborate stories with the song titles. So there's definitely a bit of a battle there.
Yeah. Do you always win on that one, or?
Absolutely, yeah.
I guess so. The fact that your album's name, Punishing Myself Before God Does, is quite a lot. It's not short time.
But then all the other kind of releases beforehand have all been single words. And I on this one was like, I've written this title. I love it, and I think it should be the name of the album. And our manager kind of weighed in on it as well. He was like, "Yeah, that's a great title."
Have you been busy this week?
Yeah, we're getting together more as a band to kind of work on live production, songwriting, and stuff like that. Like I think we've realised that we are needing to be more active and more with each other, and then we all work full-time jobs. So you think probably about 20-30 years ago, bands like us would probably be full-time touring all the time, earning lots and lots of money, but it's just not the case right now. We're kind of just there or thereabouts, like full-time job, and then of an evening you're playing shows. I was saying that I went to see Avril Lavigne last night, so there was a bit of a break. Yeah, she was fantastic.
Yeah,
absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. So how do you find navigating your daytime job with the gig in it? Is it exhausting?
It is, but it's also incredibly rewarding. I work for a private medical company doing research into long-term chronic health conditions, and the boys have various other jobs. I won't go into what they do, but because we are quite an established band and we go out and tour a lot and have got a little bit of notoriety behind us, and I think Download Festival this year has been that when everyone kind of hears you playing that, they go, oh, you always get the question of, oh, are you going to play that? And this year it's like, no, we're playing Download this year. And then people kind of go, oh, it's like a real thing. It's not just like you play a couple of pubs. So it's about balance. And I find that I've got a very good relationship with my work, whereas a lot of the time I work from home, and then I do a lot of lecturing, and then I can make it work around the band. Some of the other boys struggle a little bit more, but I think we've been in their respective businesses long enough to be able to garner that trust and balance between it.
Yeah. So I was going to wait till later, but obviously you've mentioned it already. Take over at Download. You're going there.
Yeah.
How did that feel?
Unbelievably excited. It was one of those things that I think I got the message from Hevs, and I was sat like just in my office over here, and I read it, and I was like, just a little tear, and I was like, this is big. And I came down to my partner, and she was like, what? Why are you crying? And I was like, I Download this year, and then I had to call the boys again, and everyone was crying, and it was all very emotional. I think because it is the status that is Download Festival, and like I've been 3, 4, 5 times like over a couple of years, and on top of that, my entire friendship group from back home are going this year and had planned to go. And then all I needed to do was drop the poster into the group chat, and everyone just went mad. And so it was one of those things where it was like all of these things kind of fell into place, and yeah, it was just an incredible thing to be put forward for. So yeah, we're very excited.
We had October Ends on last week, Drew and Alice from October Ends, and they said that the guy got the first call to say they were on. He was on the loo when he got it, so that was a better story.
I bet
that was emotional, I think.
Yeah.
So you said you've been a few times. So honestly, what does it think when you see your name on that poster? It's one of the festivals, probably not. I always say it's one of the biggest in the world. It's got to be, surely.
Yeah, I don't know the number count, but I think, Wacken in Germany is the biggest,
Okay.
I believe. And then I think just the prestige of download, because obviously you've got Bloodstock and Sonosphere was a thing, but now no longer is. And then there's nothing really of that scale in our genre
Yeah.
at all. So it kind of feels like this mecca. It's the 20th anniversary and it's sold out for the very first time. So it feels very prestigious. It's also 5 days this time rather than 3.
Yeah.
And Metallica are doing 2 sets. So I don't know what's going on, but it just feels very, very large scale this time round.
It's massively stacked the whole weekend. Because this is the first time I'm going.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I looked, and obviously I was telling you before we came on air, I've been ill and stuff, and had to kind of wingle it with the missus, really. And there's been this point where she's like, well, if you get ill, you could always go, I've got family in Nottingham, so we're not far down the road. And I'm like, yeah, I could do. And I looked at the whole thing and thought, there's not one band I want to miss. I'll just lay in the field being ill if I have to be.
Yeah, just play for me.
Yeah. So,
who are you looking forward to seeing then?
Out of the kind of expect the bands that are already kind of made it kind of thing, I'm a massive Slipknot fan. So for me, Slipknot, Architects, and I Prevail probably. I'm really excited to see Graphic Nature, Rituals from the emerging bands, yourselves, and October Ends as well. There's not. I'm really torn. There's some bands that I've looked and gone, if they're playing at the same time, I'm going to be torn here. So it's a hard one.
It's always the way where you've got to you're like, right, if I catch 15 minutes of them and 15 minutes of them, and you look at the logistics of the field, and you're like, well, it's going to take me 10 minutes to walk across the field. So 10 of them, and then the 10-minute walk. But yeah, it's an incredible festival.
The thing for me is I like Metallica, but I'm not a massive Metallica fan. Although they were the first ever kind of heavy metal album I listened to. I was given a copy of the Blackout, and it was kind of it was the first heaviest thing I'd really listened to, and I loved it. And it's probably one of my favorite albums up there. But they're not necessarily a band that I'm excited to go and see them, but they weren't. They didn't they're not. They're probably the ones I'd miss about not out of the whole weekend, which is saying something.
It's funny because I feel like it's almost sacrilege to say that you don't like Metallica.
Yeah.
No, I personally, I don't like them.
Yeah.
But I appreciate what they've done for our music and our genre. It's just something I cannot listen to, but I can hear influences from them everywhere. It's impossible not to. And the status and size of them is so grandiose that they were headlining Coachella, but Glastonbury. Things like that, and it's like you can't deny what they've done.
Oh yeah, without it.
Their music doesn't resonate with me.
Yeah.
So I always feel like, if I ever say anything like that, I'm going to get crucified. But yeah,
it's like saying you don't like Black Sabbath at the same time, isn't it? You might as well just go. You might as well just give up your card. Yeah.
Big Four never liked them anyway.
What about yourself, and who you wanting to see?
In October I went to November. In October I went to Las Vegas, and I went to When We Were Young Fest, which had My Chemical Romance, Paramore, Bring Me the Horizon, and all of these incredible bands. And I saw Bring Me the Horizon there for the first time in probably 12 years, and stand out best band of the day, really, without a shadow of a doubt. And I'm so excited to see them headline. And what they brought to When We Were Young Fest for a 40-minute set will pale in comparison to what they're going to bring. And it feels as big as when Slipknot headlined Download for the first time, a British band stepping up into that. And they bring this incredible discography of music, because there's no way they're not going to play something extremely heavy and then follow up with their lightest, poppiest song, and you've just got this incredible dichotomy of music and sounds around you. And I really think that they're gonna bring a lot of energy to the sort of headlining genres. I love Parkway Drive. I have done for a long time. And I know their music has changed, but they will always be one of the best live bands. Architects are incredible. Motionless in White, I
Yes,
think
yeah.
are fantastic. And just lots of bands that you don't get to see regularly. And I know I've got a lot of friends who are playing there as well, which is going to be really cool.
Motionless in White, I only got into this year. I don't know how it was. I was late into them. Motionless in White and I Prevail were two bands I didn't know a lot. I've heard of them, but never really listened to them. And then when the Download Festival came out, the lineup, I started listening to all the bands on the thing, and I fell in love with I Prevail. I fell in love with Motionless in White. Yeah,
really, really good bands, and they just bring, like Motionless in White particularly, bring this kind of stage presence and kind of theatrical nature to their performance, and it's just fantastic.
So let's go back to the very beginning then. So where did Confessions of a Traitor start, and what's kind of like the origin story of you guys?
We started on a website called joinmyband.com. Really like not your run of the mill. We were all friends at school. Not at all. It was I used to be, I think I mentioned to you before, I used to be a professional rugby player, and never I'd done like choir and stuff in school, and then just really wanted to be in a metal band. My friends at home were like kind of interested, but nobody was really committed to it. And I was like, no, I really, really want to set my sight on this, and I want to do it. So I just stuck some really poor recordings up online of me screaming to like Heart of a Coward and As I Lay Dying. And then had a number of auditions for bands and liked a lot of them. And went for my final audition with the guys in Cope, and walked into the room, did the audition, and they played me some of the original stuff. And I was like, oh my God, this is absolutely incredible. Like, this is completely my vibe. And at that time, there was only 3 of them. And I think they were called Punish the Butler. And I was like, if I'm joining, this name has got to change because it's the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. And they went, but it's really memorable. I was like, nobody's going to remember you for the right reason, though. So, yeah, we kind of started as a little bit of a 4-piece, jamming some stuff. And then one of my best friends, Chris, came down, kind of dragged him along because he's a good little singer and could play guitar. And then we kind of kicked off from there, and that was the first kind of iteration. And then 2 of the members subsequently left, and we then brought on board our current drummer and our current guitarist, who was our touring tech for a little while, and released so we did a little EP before they joined, and then after that we released our album in 2019 called Guided, and we kind of, I say, the Jake, who joined in on vocals and guitars, had been in bands that supported us for a little while, and then we'd asked him to come on tour with us. Seb did auditions for drums and is just a super talented like jazz drummer, but really likes metal. So he's always doing these weird little flair. I don't really get it. Like, I just like the sound of his drumming. So yeah, it started off as like some guys who met on the internet, and have now subsequently kind of become a really, really close group of best friends, which is really cool.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously the name changed then. So where does the name come from?
It came from a little like EP or album title that I'd kind of come up with. And I was, it's quite a cool, almost like edgy thing. Like, like if I use this as the way to confess all of my sins I've done throughout my life. And when we were deciding on the name, they were like, that's just a really cool band name. And it's like, it just sounds kind of heavy, but also not too heavy.
Yeah.
But I guess like if you could hear it and then you'd hear like Thy Art Is Murder style blast beats, it wouldn't be out of place, but it would also kind of sit well within like a hardcore or metalcore sound. So it kind of, it traversed, and it I guess it kind of holds up as this idea of what we as a band kind of stand for moving forward,
Yeah.
which is the idea of, you know, that you can redeem yourself through the bad actions that you have made or the sins that you've committed, and push forward and become a better person. So the name has almost kind of evolved with the kind of meaning and the faith and everything behind the lyrics and stuff like that. So it's kind of grown from there.
It's also followed, I'm guessing it's followed that kind of trajectory as well with the title of the newest album, with obviously you saying punishing yourself before God does. That ties quite well into that as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's that whole idea of redemption, and striving to be a better person, because everybody is going to make mistakes in their life. That's what it's all about. That's how you grow. So I guess we've kind of got this ethos, and the name has developed from there, from, you know, just a kind of silly, I'll confess all my bad, to actually, no, if I do that and learn and grow, then, you know, not only does the music stand that, but the band's name stands for that as well. So yeah, I feel like it's worked out in that format. Maybe it didn't start like that, but has definitely evolved into that as a meaning for us.
How do you think your fan base would differ if you kept the name Punishing the Butler?
I mean, maybe we would have some very well-dressed top hat, monocles and canes in the crowd, all jeering in very posh accents. But yeah, I mean, it didn't last very long. I think it was all of about 3 or 4 weeks before I put my foot down and was like, this needs to change.
Can you remember, while we're on the subject, kind of like embarrassing me, do you remember the name of your first ever demo tape?
Well, we had so demo songs were, oh god, I remember one was called Guerrilla Aggression. And as Jack was describing, it just sounds like a massive gorilla stomping around the room. I was like, okay. And then we had like some extremely strange titles for a little while. It was like, I don't want to butcher it. It was like Gandalf's Wizarding Adventures, and then the most recent ones they've been called Game of Tones.
Okay.
And then the next the demos for the next album called Tonehenge Part 3. And like they're just silly little like demo titles. Like you always get, you know what boys in bands are like, they'll come up with ridiculous names. The Mighty Slug was another one, and like they just end up being ridiculous. But you know, and then you're like, well, for the best part of a year, you're still remembering that the demo name was that, and then you're going, this is, no, it's not the Mighty Slug, it's 12. So yeah, you've got to kind of check yourself before you start calling it something completely different.
You go on live and you've got a set list of different names on the thing because they're all what you just remember from the first.
We did have all the demos down at one point because none of us could remember the album titles.
Let's talk about the album then. So Punishing Myself Before God Does. That came out in 2022. Kind of what's kind of like the story and narrative behind the whole album? Yeah, I think you've touched a little bit on it with kind of how you've described the band, but
yeah, I mean, it was obviously born out of, you know, an incredibly unique period of time in the pandemic, and you know, prior to that, we released an album in 2019, and I had all these crazy touring plans for 2020. Lockdown hit, and everyone globally was obviously trapped in their homes. So I just said to the boys, I was like, well, why don't we capitalize on this and just start writing? So at the time I was playing heaps of video games, absolutely, a metric ton of them. And then I remember thinking, why don't I write like lyrics based off of the games that I'm playing? And I didn't tell anyone that's what I was doing. And then as we were going along, we wrote this EP in lockdown in my living room, did all the recording for vocals and guitars, and then just programmed the drums. All the while, we were writing the album, the quote unquote, the serious album in the background. So I had this like kind of like outlet of like arty expression through this video game medium on our EP called Press Start to Play, which we released over about 8 months. So it was like single comes out, but we'd already written and recorded Punishing in we rented out an Airbnb for a couple of weeks and sat in there and recorded the entire album. But the album itself is an introspective look on how we were personally affected during the pandemic. There was a lot of cliches coming out at the time, like, oh, screw the government, they're keeping us in lockdown. Boris Johnson's an idiot, we can't, all this, like, and I'm not a hugely political person. I write a lot of personal stuff that I feel resonates with some people, and I find if I can write something personal that somebody else can like I said, resonate with or read into in a different way, I feel that hits and has greater staying power than a lot of things. And it's just how I feel about things. So a lot of the songs were written about the breakdown of relationships, the breakdown of friendships, the death of family members, people lost to disease and during the pandemic, and then like how I personally felt about my faith and belief in my friends and religion and stuff like that. And it was just all this kind of this melting pot of emotion. And I remember before we went in to record the vocals, a couple of big events happened to the band, and I rewrote a good portion of the tracks to reflect how we felt at that time. 4 out of the 5 members' grandparents were all suffering from dementia and died within that period of time. Mm-hmm. So one of the songs reflected that directly, and it's a very difficult song to write and play live because of the emotional hooks in there. But it's such a catharsis to get it off your chest. And I remember when I presented the lyrics, everyone was like, oh my God, that's just, it's a heavy subject, but felt that if it wasn't tackled, I wasn't doing it justice, if that made sense. So yeah, it's definitely an introspective, emotional expose of what happened over probably the last 2-3 years.
Yeah. You said you had like a battle with your kind of beliefs in religion and stuff like that. Have you discovered that, or is that something that you've really still struggling with now?
No, I don't personally. I consider myself a good Christian boy. I was brought up by a very, very Catholic mother in a very, very religious household. Mm-hmm. But I think, when things happen that you have no explanation for, it does challenge you. Yeah. If you're not challenged in the way that you think, then there's no way that you can build back up the faith and belief within yourself. So I constantly think of it as like, right, if you go through life without any form of challenges, I don't think you're going to be a well-rounded person. And these things need to happen to you to allow you to grow, and it's the natural process of life. So I'd be lying to you if I said that I wasn't challenged at times, but I'm definitely a stronger person for it now, for sure.
It's good challenging yourself though as well, and having them challenges of beliefs, because it makes you more aware of the positive as well, doesn't it?
100%, yeah. And it's like, it's the age-old saying, like, you don't know you've got something good until you've lost it.
Yeah.
And if you're never challenged about anything in life, then you never have any value with it. So I strongly believe that you need to go through these things, and they suck, man. But then you come out the other side and you're like, man, I'm so glad that was there to see me through it.
Yeah, definitely. Touching on you were saying about the song that you wrote that covered all the dementia issues and stuff like that. How does that feel still now? What must be nearly 2 years later when you sing that on live?
It's tough. What, like this? Yeah. So for us in the band, like you can see at the stage of which somebody is at with how they're responding live. Okay. So one of the lads, Jacob, the guitarist, his grandmother is still in a hospice
Okay.
at the moment, and she's lived with the condition now for a number of years, whereas the other three of us have actually lost our grandparents now to it. And we've gone through our stages of grieving, and when we first played the song live, there wasn't a dry eye on the stage, because we're getting this emotion across, and then you're looking around, you're seeing one of the boys welling up, and then you're like, oh, I've got to look the other way, see the other one welling up, and you're like, God, I can't be seen to tear up on stage. So it's one of these things where I think when you feel that emotion and that connection between everybody there's always going to be an emotive thing, and I only look at that as a good thing. It means you've written something powerful.
Yeah, and I guess as well, coming back to how you all formed, in the fact of not the traditional way of, well, we all met at high school and we've gravitated to this. You've all met from separate lives.
Yeah.
But there's something that's brought you all together. And it's a horrible thing, but it comes back to kind of the challenges. We face this challenge, but we've got the people around you, and it sounds like it's made you as a band stronger as well.
Tremendously. Yeah. And I think going through, what everybody went through, I can remember, not just this particular case with all four of us having family members who have had dementia, but what we went through during the pandemic as well. Like for the first time as a world, we all went through the same thing or similar, and a lot of things happened during that period of time that people are able to echo in whatever way. There are going to be similar shared experiences of isolation, depression, anxiety, and then once it all opened up again, everyone thought it was going to be fine, but it's probably been worse for us, and not just from an economical standpoint, from an emotional standpoint and a resilient standpoint. Everybody has been hit tremendously, and I feel like because we were active during that period of time, we can look back on this record and go, wow, that was a moment. And I can remember where I was when I wrote those words, and where that riff was written, and how we felt when that happened. And I really, really like looking back on those things, and I think it's super, super powerful.
I've said it a few times on this podcast, but I think we'll never, ever know the true damage that lockdown and COVID caused, not just from the people that, sadly lost their lives for the actual disease, but from a mental health point of view.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
And I think it has changed people's brain chemistry fundamentally. And the way they see the world and their relationships with people. Yeah.
The thing I've noticed, it changed a lot, which is a very small thing, but whenever I worked for years in hospitality, and I went into work with colds no end of times. Yeah. You'd be stood at tables with rubbing your nose or blowing your nose just before you go over there. Now, as soon as anyone gets a cold, they put masks in.
Yeah,
we never thought about that previously, and it's such actually it's the right thing to do, isn't it?
Or just not come in and spread it. The other huge change is this working from home.
Yeah,
it's crazy. Like this, I was already doing hybrid working anyway, but now it's like you only come in if you need to.
Yeah.
All right. But and then you feel that level of isolation like compounded on top of that. So it's a strange old beast, isn't it?
Yeah. While we're on that kind of subject as well, is one of the things I wanted to cover was obviously today this podcast comes out on the 15th, which is Mental Health Awareness Week. Obviously a lot of your tracks, you've covered that. I'm guessing it is from a mental health point of view as well. Have you ever suffered with your mental health, or?
I mean, I'd be lying if I said to you I walk through life without anything. Like, in short, I've never been diagnosed with anxiety or depression or anything like that. But I think that's probably my ignorance towards the subject. Okay. I think as I've got older, I wouldn't say wiser, I'd say probably more worldly. There are definite traits, and I think being in the lockdowns were the closest I've ever been. And I think like I said before, the catharsis of writing things down really helped me. I'm a very active person. I exercise a lot and I eat really well. So I do everything that you should do to promote a good, healthy lifestyle. So I can't say that I've struggled with, the standard terms of anxiety and depression. However, I'd be lying to you if I said that I didn't struggle with other things, the way I look, the way I feel, that's a daily struggle. But, I generally have a really positive outlook on things. I may wake up and have a really bad day, but I know things are going to get better. Whether I look back on this interview in 10 years time and I go, oh God, I was absolutely miserable back then and I'm now super happy. I can't tell you, because you can only kind of reflect on the current status of yourself at this point in time. So I look at it as how I feel, and if that resonates with somebody who is suffering from anxiety and depression, that's amazing. Whether I know I have it or not, or have struggled with it, probably, but I can't say definitively. I think I do as much as I can to promote a good, healthy lifestyle.
You tick all the boxes in so many ways, in the fact that you said eating healthy. My wife's actually a mental health practitioner. She works for mental health. She always promotes activity. We always take the mick out of her, me and the kids, because the first thing you say whenever you say you don't feel well in the house, she'll go for a walk and have a banana. It's like kind of her saying. So but also as well, the writing. Well, I suffered with my mental health last year, and one of my therapists, he said about writing like a diary, and I ended up writing poems and songs because that's kind of my brain's tuned to that. So it was, and I found it really relaxing. So that's probably helping you already before you've even started, because you've already got mind frame.
Yeah, it's definitely an outlook that, and this is why I say, like, there have been dark times for sure. Like I can put my hands up and say that there have been, but whether I struggle with it, I don't know. I would say generally not, but that would be a very ignorant statement to make. But I'm definitely with you, like, because within the healthcare system that I work with, the chronic disease comes with a tremendous volume of mental health issues. So I work with people like that on a day-to-day basis, and this is, it's all relative, but my mental health is not as bad as theirs. But does that mean that I have it or not? I don't know. Does it mean that I don't struggle with it? No, it doesn't. But it's one of these things where you look at people who genuinely have long-term health conditions and you think, man, like, I get why you are struggling. I get it. And like, it almost kind of kicks me into gear a little bit. It's like, what have you got to worry about? Because you've got your health, and that is true wealth, and that's the way that I kind of, I guess, look at things.
The thing is, from my kind of side of it, obviously I've got a long-term health condition. I've talked about it a couple of times on the podcast. I spoke to you beforehand. I haven't got the best of outcomes, future kind of prospects as it stands. But that doesn't mean that my mental health is worse than someone who's not suffering with it as well. And just because someone's dealing with it differently, I've had people where they'll go talking to me about mental health and they'll go, oh, actually, I shouldn't really moan to you because, I can see yourself, you struggle with it. And I'm like, well, just because yours is different doesn't make it any less relevant. It's for you as well. Just because yours, what looks on the outside not to be a big thing, it is to you. And that's affecting you.
100%. Yeah. And I think that's where I struggle. I struggle with the line of it. Like, I'd never want to, devalue somebody else's experiences by going, oh, I struggle with it as well. But then at the same time, it's like I said, it's all relative. So, it depends on how you respond to things and how your body is wired, essentially. So, I definitely find that, the cliche tropes of going for a walk and having a banana and then writing things down. If I'm already doing that, well, then I'm combating it in the right way if I am feeling down.
I'm a big, outside of that, I always say, go join a sports team like I'm like, yeah, I wasn't ever as big, but I did rugby for years as well. So I go and join either a communal team, no matter what level you think you're at. If you enjoy that sport, go and join a team. They'll welcome you with open arms. Or go and watch live music and join kind of like a group that go and watch live music, because they're the best communities to be in and they're so welcoming.
100%. What position did you play when you played rugby?
I was a prop. Well, we yourself.
I started my career as a prop. And
I hope Union. Are you Union?
Oh, Union. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There is only one rugby. I don't know what you're saying.
Well, unfortunately, I live up in near Liverpool, so it's more kind of league up here. So I kind of
and then I had a growth spurt as a kid, and I transitioned to 7. So I played open side for the best part of my career.
So you say you were professional? What level?
Pro, semi-pro. Yeah, I played in the championship for a team called Isha.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
And then I moved to New Zealand for a year, and I played rugby down in Taranaki for a while.
Wow.
So yeah, I've been a few places and seen a few things. But I've completely fallen out of love with the sport though.
Okay.
I feel like it was great, and it helped build my resilience, and all the banter back and forth between the team, really, really builds you up, because if you haven't got, if you don't develop a thick skin there, then I don't know where you can develop it. But, towards the end, I felt like it could get a little toxic. There's a lot of toxic masculinity within some sports. And I've just fallen out of love with it. I mean, when you've had too much of something good and you want to move on to something else, I feel like music really, really grew as my passion.
Do you still follow it at all? Obviously, with the World Cup coming up, are you?
No, I've completely dropped off. Yeah, completely. It was really weird.
Yeah.
Like, I think the last game I played was about 6 years ago, and I think I've watched maybe 3 games, and 2 of them were on a stag do, and it was with the rugby team, and I was like, I'm going to watch a rugby game now. But yeah, no, I just didn't really have any interest in it since, which is very strange.
I stopped playing about would have been about 5 years ago. I'd gone to uni, and I was struggling to find time studying, working, and doing everything, and I couldn't commit. So and obviously you get an injury and you can't work. So that was playing more and more on my mind. And then now I can't, because obviously I've got a pacemaker, so I can't take contact. But I'm trying to talk to my local team about maybe doing a touch rugby team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just try and get fitness back, because that's, for me, I need to lose weight, but the only way of doing it is in that kind of environment for me. Yeah,
and it's a great environment to do it in.
Yeah,
because you're constantly moving, and there's a lot of really good fun going on there.
It is good, but I go and watch our local team, Southport, and I sit there and I'm like, I'm just aching to get on the pitch. I really want to do it. So I can understand if you've got to that level, moving completely away from it.
Yeah, I never understood myself when people stepped away from it until I got to the stage where I was like, I've had enough.
Yeah,
it was really interesting. It was like the moment the switch flicked, I was done, and I just didn't care. And I knew I should have done, but I just couldn't. And for the last maybe 6 months of playing, I was just like there, not contributing much at all.
It's a shame, but yeah, I get it from you. I get it. I get why people do fall out of love with it. It's for any sport, really. When you get to that point where you fall out of love with it, there's no point trying to play, is there?
Exactly. Otherwise, you're doing your team and yourself a bit of a disservice with the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, I value the years I had there, and it was transformative for me as a super shy, like, emo kid growing up, and I was like bullied in the best ways by my rugby team. Bully is probably the wrong word to use, but I was bantered to absolute death about the music that I listened to. But I'm still here, I'm still listening, still making music. So it only did me good.
That was my pre-match thing. I'd always have my headphones in with Slipknot on before I go on pitch. I'd always have my headphones in.
Yeah,
you need it. That aggression.
Yeah, it was always Linkin Park and Mudvayne and like all the new metal bands, like Korn and stuff like that.
let's stay on the subject of yourself then a little bit. So, kind of, where did you grow up then?
South London.
South
So
London.
my parents are Irish.
Okay.
They moved over here, and I lived near Richmond, and then they moved a little bit further out. And I've stayed in London apart from when I went to New Zealand. Studied university here, went to St Mary's, and then I went to Roehampton. I did my master's in biomechanics there. Then now I live near Croydon in South London. Got my nice little flat on a council estate.
What was kind of like the vibe in the house? What was it? What was your parents listening to? Because I'm guessing it wasn't kind of like the heavy metal that you.
I mean, so I had a lot of Irish folk music,
Okay.
and my mum's always sung, and she was listening to like old Irish ballads all the time. But it was my dad. My dad really liked like rock and roll, so U2, Dire Straits, Pink Floyd, The Who, and he always had like a record player kicking around and like really decent speakers. So I'd just spin up whatever he had, and I found a particular affinity with Pink Floyd.
Oh.
I just fell in love with them, and then I think when I went to school, it was like when the sort of like grungers were around and like new metal was really kicking off. So my school started like listening to Linkin Park and Limp Bizkit, Korn, and it was that fully influenced my taste in music growing up. I mean, like literally 2 weeks ago, went to see Limp Bizkit at Wembley Arena, and I was like, oh God, like this is just perfect. So it's one of these things where that snapshot in time had such an influence on me. I remember the first gig I ever went to was to see Muse at Wembley Arena.
Okay.
And then my dad could come with me, and he was like, oh God, this band are amazing. And then I started influencing his music taste, and then it just kind of went back and forward for a little while until I went like super heavy. I think the first like heavy band I got into was Trivium. And I remember like secretly putting Pull Harder on the Strings of Your Martyr on my headphones in the changing rooms before rugby, just so that no one else could hear all the screaming that was going on.
So, do your parents go to any of your gigs and stuff?
They do actually, yeah. I mean, my dad is quite deaf now. He wears a hearing aids. He's in his mid to late 70s. So it kind of, he'll come, stick his head in the venue, run out again, just because it just destroys the sound that it picks up in his ear. So he kind of either turns his head, his hearing aids off, and just kind of watches me sweat and climb around on stage. But my mum has actually visited us on tour in Europe. She's been out to like Vienna in Austria to come and see us. When we were touring with Upon a Burning Body in Texas in July. And she's been to quite a few, to be fair, and she gets on really well with the rest of the band. So yeah, she's a bit of a trooper. She said she was coming out to watch me play in Vienna, but I think she went shopping with one of her best friends, and just happened to stumble into the venue. So yeah, they do. They're super supportive. I think they thought it was a bit weird at first, all the shouting and the screaming, but as it's kind of matured and mellowed a little bit as I've started singing more, they're a bit, oh yeah, I can really hear the melody in this now.
I take it your mum doesn't get in the middle of the mosh pit then?
I'm sure she'd show a good few spin kick moves if she could, if her hip wasn't going to dislocate. But yeah, she's there in spirit.
In spirit, yeah. So what was a turning point for you with regards to heavy metal music?
Trivium,
yeah.
Yeah, Trivium, and it was finding Paul Harder on the Strings of Your Martyr.
Yeah.
I was into a lot of like prog, like Tool. Yeah. So went for the new metal phase, absolutely. Like every kid did. When you find Hybrid Theory and Chocolate Starfish and Issues and Follow the Leader, and it was like this that built a good chunk of my personality. And then and then I like to think as I started to refine my music taste, I was into like loads of Radiohead and Tool and Incubus, and started going really soft. And then just discovered Trivium, and it was all the riffs, and like it really took me a while to get into the screaming. But the moment that sat with me, somebody handed me The End of Heartache by Killswitch Engage, and and ever since then, it's just been hardcore, metal, deathcore. Don't get me wrong, like I still listen to a ton of pop music and synthwave. Like my music taste is super eclectic, and that does reflect in quite a bit of my writing style. Because it's never about death and gore and decapitating people or anything like that. But it like I listen to a lot of different music when I'm writing. And you know, The Weeknd is probably my favorite artist at the moment.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, and like I said to you, I went to see Avril Lavigne the other night. I went to see Paramore the night before, like about 2 weeks ago. So like I really like a lot of like different styles of music for sure.
I was sulking like mad after I saw the Limp Bizkit concert at London. It just looked amazing. It's one of the bands that I've missed so far, but I grew up loving.
Yeah.
So I've never seen them live, so I really want to see them.
I can't even begin to state how good they are. And just have you watched that Woodstock documentary on Netflix?
I was literally about to come into that. Yes.
Yeah. And
watching that.
The energy that they bring when Break Stuff comes on is unparalleled. So you have this like, you know, everyone knows it's coming. Everyone knows it's going to be their last song. And Fred Durst, whatever anyone says, is still the coolest frontman to have ever existed and to ever exist. And you know, he's just there strutting. He's like, we're just going to break some stuff, and the entire crowd is like 10,000 people jump in unison. I've never seen anything like it, and it just unlocks this feral nature within people. I just honestly just think that they are phenomenal. I know this is going to sound super hipster of me, but I never didn't like them.
Okay.
Like it was all, you know, when they were cool, became super uncool.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, no, Limp Bizkit are rubbish, but I was always still listening to them. But like this is just ironically. But then when it's become cool to like go and watch, but I never saw them until I saw them at Download it was probably 2012, and they headlined the second stage on a Sunday. At the same time as Rammstein, I think, and one of the best festival experiences I've ever had watching them play. And I was like, this band is phenomenal.
Also, as well, you can see the turning point in that Woodstock documentary. That is a turning point at Break Stuff, where the whole crowd just go absolutely. They can't control them after that point, and that was the point in the thing, wasn't it? It was whoever came up with this of putting them on at that time wrote that festival's death wish, really.
And especially at where they were at that point, and also Korn had played before them, and the Red Hot, I think it was the Red Hot Chili Peppers had played before, after them or something. And you know, they were just winding things. Everybody was like, "This, we're just going to make a mess of this," and it was just like, I loved it. I thought it was an incredible documentary.
The documentary is brilliant. Definitely recommend it to anyone to watch. The supporting Limp Bizkit that night was a band that I'm loving as well, Black Gold. And they've got that kind of Limp Bizkit vibe. And when I first heard them, I thought Limp Bizkit, and then I saw that they were touring with Limp Bizkit. I was like, that's crazy.
Yeah, I unfortunately I missed them, and I was quite excited to see them. But they're actually at Download, I believe.
They are, yeah.
So I'm going to try and catch them, and I've spun them up a couple of times. I definitely get the vibe. I believe they're from London as well. I do believe they're from London.
I've actually approached them to try and get them on the podcast, but they've already said no, that they don't do interviews because they have because of their project, they do like voice changing and stuff like that. So it'd be a bit hard to have them on a podcast, but they are one. If they are listening, I would love to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, I mean they seem great. I actually met them not in full character at the Heavy Music Awards last year.
Right.
And I was like, oh, these guys are going to be interesting. Let's see what happens with them. And they seem to be doing really well. And it's great to see them doing so well.
Yeah. The music scene at the moment is just amazing. Just the upcoming bands. When I was talking to Drew Ellis last week from October Ends, I was saying that, you guys were 5 picked out of a short list of 500 and something acts. And then they put out a playlist, Hev's put out a playlist of 23 bands that were shortlisted in the final. And all 23 bands on that shortlist could have easily played any night at Download.
Yeah.
Not just the opening night, but any down. That was how the testament to the kind of music scene at the moment.
I have some really good friends who were on that list in Wars, Bleed Again, and Chug a Boom. Okay. And like, to see that they didn't get on, I was like, that's insane, because I know how talented they are, and how revered I hold them in my expectations.
Yeah.
So, it's even more of a privilege to have been chosen within that kind of group, because you think 500 bands submitted, there's got to be a lot of like young bands who are just chucking their hat in and just think, oh, haven't done a whole bunch. But that's not to say that they wouldn't be talented at all, because I strongly believe that they are. They probably just need a bit more development and refinement of their sound. But then when you see the list of super established UK bands, and you're like, oh my God, okay, wow, okay, so this is the kind of company we're holding at this point in time. So really, it was an amazing thing to see. And I was disappointed for them as like friends, because I only want to see them succeed. But then, like, from a selfish perspective, it's like, oh my God, but we've made it onto the bill, which is incredible. So yeah, I if you get the chance to have a listen to Chug a Boom, Wars, and Bleed Again, I really would. Especially like Chug a Boom, the vocalist is just sensational. And I was chatting to him. We played Takedown Festival with them a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, I think I need singing lessons from you, because you are like, the way you can go from screaming to singing is just unbelievable. And he was telling me that he used to do musical theatre. Okay. And that makes perfect sense. Yeah. It makes perfect sense, because he just the pitch and like the harmonies. And I was like, oh, will you look at that? So I'd really check them out. They're fantastic.
Yeah, I'll come back to gigging in a minute, but coming back to your music, how do you think your sound has developed from your first EP, Illuminate, which was in 2017, to your newest album now?
There's a lot more depth to the music. So, what we did is we worked with various different people over the years. The chap who recorded Illuminate was a guy called Ramesh, who actually worked on bands like Silosis, Bring Me the Horizon, Manic Street Preachers, and is an incredibly renowned producer, but does a very stripped back style of music. The next chap we worked with, he produced, mixed and mastered both our album Guided and our 2021 EP Press Start to Play. Worked more within that kind of metalcore genre, and then what we started to do with the most recent release is work with producers within specific areas. So we had a drummer up in Manchester record drums. We had a guitarist. So Jacob, actually, our guitarist, recorded all the guitars for the record. And then we went to a specific vocal producer called Justin Hill, who's also the singer from Sixth, and did all our vocals there. And he really stepped up like mine and Jake's game on the record. And then we had it mixed and mastered by a chap called Andrew Wade, who has done Wage War, A Day to Remember, I believe like I Prevail as well. So those big American bands. but so from who we've worked with, I think we've kind of developed, we've already been back with Justin already working on some vocal bits. We're going to go back to Andrew for the production because we've found something that we really like. And I think that was like, you work with a couple of people and you're like, okay, I really like that, I really like that. What elements else can we bring in? But from a musicianship, the guys have continued to grow as musicians and primarily songwriters. So what you hear in the first few records are a collection of cool riffs that we've kind of gone, that's kind of a chorus, that's kind of a breakdown, and there's less structure to it. Whereas on the album Punishing, we have really solid structure. So we've not just gone, let's bung a load of great riffs together. Yeah. We've gone, right, let's think of this as an actual song. Like, where can we kind of, what are we really enjoying about this? And let's kind of double down on a little bit of repetition. And we worked on that song structure. And then from a message perspective, my writing has really matured, and I feel like I have found my identity as a songwriter and a lyric writer. There's a lot of like dipping your toe into what I wanted to say on the first couple of releases, and then I just tore off the band-aid and just went, no, this is what I want to talk about, and I'm gonna be shameless about it. And if somebody doesn't like it, that's okay, because this is what this is always what I wanted to write about, and this is how I want it to come across. And I think that comes with the maturity of releasing a couple of things. And then ultimately just liking what you sound like. We've never written to go, oh yeah, I want to sound like this, or I want to sound like this. Like I said, like I've got a lot of like a hugely eclectic range of music that I listen to. And that goes with every member of the band. And I think we've gone from probably quite hardcore elements in the beginning into a little bit more metalcore, and then really kind of doubled down on that sort of metalcore side. Yeah. But there's this sort of big old draw from like this UK hardcore side. And I think, the way in which some of the demos are shaping up at the moment, we're kind of, right, well, hold on, if we're going to write a hardcore song, let's write a hardcore song. If we're going to write a metalcore song, let's write a metalcore song. If we're going to write an emotional song, let's not try and meld them all together. Let's write something and as we want it to sound, whereas we were trying to just blend everything in this melting pot. So I think the songs are going to generate their own identity as well. So yeah, I really think that's where the growth has come from.
Did you think you worried too much that if you went too much towards one genre, it would isolate fans from another? Is that why you were doing that, or was it just originally?
I think it was like what you have is you've got 5 voices, okay, or everyone liking different things, and they're like, well, if you like this riff, like that sounds really good with that, and it's just almost this kind of like mix and match.
Yeah.
Whereas now, like I said, we come in with this idea of like, let's write a song. Like let's think about the flow of the song rather than sick riff, wicked breakdown, kind of cool lead. We really want that. And sometimes songs are born out of that, but we really look at it as like, right, where can impactful vocals hit? And like, what are we feeling from this music? Because I think what you feel initially from the first listen on the music is so important. Because if you've got this really kind of slow emotive song, and then you've got some guy, rapping about Saturday nights and getting battered, you're it's like, what? Like, so if you're feeling something from the song, match the vibe with the lyrics that are going to go on top. And I feel like, I used to write a lot of really positive lyrics over the heaviest songs that we'd written. Sometimes I look back and think, yeah, it kind of worked, but retrospectively, I probably should have done something a little bit kind of darker and a bit moodier. So yeah, I think it comes with like listening to the tracks and thinking, what do I feel from this? And maybe that's just maybe the other boys would say something completely different, be like, yeah, it all just sounds sick, and I'll just bang it on the track. And then there's me, the emotional, lyricist, talking about how do I feel? How do I want to get out of it?
You're bringing the real Morrissey to the group.
Yeah, exactly.
Would you go back and re-record Illuminate now
100%,
and rewrite
100%.
it?
Yeah,
Or,
yeah.
So you're not one of them, or is the past is the past?
I'm not, because I think there are so many cool elements on that record that, with the growth that we've had musically and ability wise, could really push. But I stand alone in that, because the guys are like, it's done, it's dead. I just think there's some really good content on there that people could, the bigger we've got, the more people could get their ears around. But then again, I do love writing new music. Yeah. So, if given the opportunity, say we blow up, become a massive band, and someone goes, actually, do you just for a 10-year anniversary, do you want to re-record your very first EP? But yeah, absolutely, why not? Let's just stick it out there and see what happens.
So going back to the gigging then, so what's the scene kind of like in London for hardcore metalcore at the moment?
It's super mixed.
Yeah.
So I mean, living in London, I can go to a gig every night. A couple of weeks ago, I think, just kind of mentioned, I saw Limp Bizkit on a Monday, Paramore on a Thursday, La Dispute on the Friday. Saturday, I went to see Counterparts, supported by Kubla Khan. And then yesterday, went to see Avril Lavigne. So, and this is all in the space of a month. Now, obviously, we're talking this quite big bands. Counterparts are, on the ascension. I think they sold out Electric in Brixton, 1,500 cap venue, a Canadian hardcore band.
Yeah.
So the scene is there, but I think from a developmental perspective, it's really quite interesting, because some bands get really good buzz about them, and they do really well online. Nobody turns up to their shows.
Okay.
We nearly, for our album release show, we nearly sold out the Boston Music Rooms, but the same night we were playing, Stray from the Path were headlining the venue above us, and Alexis on Fire were playing Brixton Academy, all on the same night that we were playing. And it's like, well, and we've almost sold out a 250 cap venue on the same night as all these bands are playing sold out venues. So there is, I think, since COVID, you're getting an influx of people coming back to the scene because they missed it. And there's a lot of talented music that you're seeing, a lot of bands blowing up, Holding Absence, Caskets. They are on the ascension and the sort of pinnacle of, the precipice of breaking through onto the global scene and being the next big referenced influential band. So I think it's great. And I think that it needs a little bit more cultivating from the grassroots level, but I think it's starting to build again, which is very exciting.
There seems to be a lot all over the country. I said it a couple of times on the podcast with Liverpool. Before COVID, you wouldn't find many metal gigs. Every now and again, maybe one would come up. Now there's promotional companies that are really actively pushing it. Liverpool is becoming quite good. You don't have to go to Manchester anymore, let's say it that way, for music, as much as it seems to be growing. And I think I read an article the other day that this is like the ticket sales are going up since COVID compared to what they were like just before COVID, which is a sign to show that people did want to go out. Yeah.
I mean, a prime example is we've talked about this for a little while. We wanted to do a Christmas show, an annual Christmas show, which we're calling Breakdown Before Christmas.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah,
and we announced it in April, and the tickets are selling fast, and it's like this is 8 months away, and we're announcing a show in London. So, the rest of the lineup hasn't been announced
I was about
yet.
to say that you've only announced you're playing. So
Yeah.
far.
Yeah. So yeah, I when our manager and booking agent were like, yeah, we'll announce it. And I was like, it's in December. What are you doing? And they were like, no, we'll see what happens. And I've been absolutely stunned by the response. So there's a hunger for it and there's an excitement for it, which is really, really cool. And can't wait to announce the rest of the bands that are on it, because there are some amazing bands that are going to be supporting us on that day.
So with regards to gigging, you've got your download night, you've got the gig in December.
Yeah.
What's in between?
We've got a lot.
Okay.
There is a big thing that we cannot announce at the moment. But there's a few things weighing in the balance with it. But when that gets announced, I think that'll rock a few boats from a perspective of how people will see us, which is incredible. And it's an incredible opportunity, and honestly cannot wait to get, because we've been sat on it for a number of months now. We are playing a festival in July called Hammerdown Festival. That's in Worthing, and I believe that's about 3 tickets away from selling out. And then we're heading back to mainland Europe in November for a couple of festival slots. Again, they've not been announced yet. So we've got a big chunk of our summer is booked up. Just kind of sat waiting for the announcement. And then festivals towards the end of the year. It's ironic that our Christmas show is announced before the festivals that we're playing at the end of the year. So, but yeah, it's a very exciting time from a gigging perspective. And having sat on our hands for the last 2.5 years, not being able to play shows, to see that kind of kick back into action is very, very exciting.
Brilliant. It is good. Okay, so we'll go on to the last part of the podcast, the up close and personal, where we ask a few questions to get to know yourself. Although I think we've done quite well throughout the podcast to get to know you. I'll start it off with an easy one straight away. So if you were, for whatever reason, found on death row, what would your death row dinner be?
Weirdly, I've thought about this quite a lot, and I don't know why. I like, because from my understanding is that you get like an entree, like a main, and a like your dessert or whatever.
Okay.
I think I'd go with pizza, primarily because I don't eat a lot of it, and you can have kind of whatever you want on it. Like it's kind of it's a bit of a mix of everything. So you can have different vegetables, different cheeses, and it's all kind of like a melting pot, like fatty goodness. And like, because I don't have it very often, it's like, it'd be like, oh, what a good way to go out. Just a big, like greasy stuffed crust pizza. And I am a grade A sucker for ice cream. Like I love Ben and Jerry's, and I genuinely think it is the only reason I am not a fitness model, because like
what flavor?
Well, this is the problem then. Now the OG, you've got fish food, which is absolutely stunning. They had one most recently, which has just come out, called Dulce Delicious, which is an Argentinian style one, which is unbelievable.
Yeah, I had it.
Peanut butter cup. You've got Chunky Monkey. As you can tell, I've not researched this and not done it, but I love Ben and Jerry's style ice cream. Just the mixture of all things good.
There's a version, and I can't remember where it's from now, and I'm going to say it might be Aldi because we shop a lot in Aldi, but there's a version of like a Ben and Jerry's ice cream. It's in the tub, but it's like 300 calories for the whole tub.
Yes. Yeah.
You've seen it, and they're delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're made from like low-fat yogurt, and they are.
Oh, yeah. The problem is they're 300 calories, so you have 6 of them in one sitting.
Yeah, you eat the whole tub, and then you're like, well, I could go for another one because it's only another 300 calories. But yeah, no, I love those ones. Yeah, because that's what, like, I guess quenches my sweet tooth.
Yeah,
because I just I could go, I could, but the thing is they're more expensive than Ben and Jerry's. You're looking at like 5 or 6 quid for like a quarter of the calories. You're like,
Which is saying something if it's more expensive than Ben and Jerry's, isn't it?
I know, right?
Yeah. What would you wash it all down with?
I'm not a drinker. I don't like. I rarely drink. So I'd probably go for like a Sprite or 7 Up, something like that. Like quite refreshing, quite lemony, something like that.
I must admit, I do drink, but I am a sucker for soft drinks. I love like Coca-Cola, stuff like that.
Pepsi Max gripped me over the last few years. I was like,
Cherry.
where does this come from? Yeah.
Yeah, Pepsi Max cherry.
Yeah, really nice.
Yeah, definitely. I'd rather have a pint of that sometimes than a beer. So yeah.
I can't stand beer. I can't stand beer at all.
This is a two-part question, but if so talk about collaborations, who would you as yourself like to collaborate with? So what band and who would you like to have collaborate with Confessions of a Traitor?
Oh, that's a big question. Because we've done a couple of really cool collaborations already. On our last album, we had Brian Kirby from Fit for a King on that record, and Scott Kennedy from Bleed From Within. So that was on our last record. And on the most recent one, of the song Forever Hollow, we had the singer from Currents, Brian Woolley. And they've just released their album this year, and it's one of the best things I've ever heard. So, like, I've already ticked a couple of names off personally, but I think from a not nostalgia, like from a perspective of my like real developmental thing, like as into metalcore, it was like Jesse Leach from Killswitch Engage and Winston from Parkway Drive. So it would be a tough call between one of those two that I'd love to feature on our record.
Yeah.
And then for me, for us to feature on someone else's record?
No, not necessarily just yourself. So if you were as a guest vocalist on another with a band, would you like to?
I'd probably say Currents, actually, because they're up there as one of my favorite bands at the moment. And Brian was on our track, and their latest album is just sensational. So yeah, if I could spit a few bars on there, I'd be super stoked.
If you could only listen to one artist for the rest of your life, what would that one artist be?
We've got probably a Day to Remember.
Okay.
And because they've got such an eclectic sound.
Yeah.
You've got super heavy, you've got the pop punk, and you've got the like acoustic style. So if you're ever not in the mood for anything, you've got a mood for something. Because if it's just blast beats and pig squeals the entire time, that's going to get a bit grating. So you could just switch genre with on the same album. So yeah, I'd probably go for A Day to Remember.
What one thing do you like to do to unwind?
Play games.
What's
Yeah.
your favorite game at the moment then?
What's my favorite game at the moment?
Yeah.
So I'm playing a game called Mortal Shell. I'm a bit of a glutton for punishment. If you've ever played like Dark Souls, or Elden Ring or anything like that, it's a brutal game.
I'm not a massive gamer. I've never really been. I'll pick up a game every now and again and get involved in it. And I really like the look of Elden Ring. And I was going to get it. And then I was saying this the other week on a podcast to someone, it was 50 quid. And I was like, I can't justify spending 50 quid on something I don't play often enough. But I'm gutted I didn't actually.
The beauty of it is you can pick it up whenever.
Yeah.
So and it will go on sale because it's been out for over a year and a half now. But I think it's cemented in the top 5 favorite games of all time. Like, it's sensational.
Yeah.
It's tough, but you can power your way through it. I genuinely think from a gameplay perspective is one of the most engaging games. I remember sitting down. I was having my house renovated, and I moved in with my partner to her flat, and I just bought the game, and I was like, I can't start this game when I move in with you, because we will no longer be a thing. Like, I will get, my life will be consumed by it. So when I moved back into my house about 6 months later, after all the work I've done, I started it then, and I just lost myself in it. And then, you know, it was something like 250 hours later, I was like crawling out the other side of the game, like, but I still want more. But there was nothing left to do. So yeah, I do get quite hooked into things like that.
If I'm going to ask this question because obviously it's Monday, Eurovision would have been on the Saturday. If Friday night, so you got a phone call from the Eurovision Song Contest people who run it for England and say, we've had a major accident. Whoever, I couldn't even tell you who's representing us, but they've got injured. We need someone to step up. Will Confessions of a Traitor come on stage and do a song, but it has to be a cover? What cover would you do to do the Eurovision?
Ooh. I think, I mean, we released the cover a little while ago of Paper Cup by Linkin Park, so that, we've got that one in the back pocket. But I think probably like a new metal song, something like, one of my favorite songs of all time is Between Angels and Insects by Papa Roach.
Okay.
So something like that, but a little bit jazzed up, a little bit heavier. But yeah, I think that would go down well.
Yeah. So the last question of this bit, which is normally people who are regular listeners will know the heart-shaped box question, which is, if there was a heart-shaped box, what one song would you have put in for future generations? We're going to mix it up a little bit at the moment. I'm going to try and theme it every week now. And this week, with it being Mental Health Awareness Week, I want you to put a song into this vault to keep for future generations. But I want it to be something that's going to be empowering and motivating. So what song would you put in there?
So I've settled on two.
Okay.
And which one will beat out the other one is I'm not sure yet. The first one is Somewhere I Belong by Linkin Park, and I think that is what is just such a powerful message. Yeah. You know, it's all about Chester finding himself and healing from like long-term pain. And you know, I could just, like, as my formative years of growing up listening to new metal, like, just that chorus still sticks into my head to this day. And the video is weird as hell, so yeah, I love it. And the other one would be Dear God by Being as an Ocean. And it is just such an introspective look on his own life and his relationship with his faith and everything like that, and how he struggles, but you know, comes out the other end of it with the support. So I'm probably going to swing with Linkin Park because it's just a grade A banger. And for some people, Being as an Ocean is a little bit hard to digest.
I'll tell you what, because it's the first week we've changed up, I'll put both in.
Yeah. I appreciate it.
So what's next for you guys then? Other than that, is there more music coming out?
So not yet. Obviously the album only came out 7 months ago. And it did really well for us, which is very exciting. We charted on the Billboard charts in America on 4 separate charts, which was incredible. And our record label was very excited about it. So, you know, we being signed to an American label, our next steps would be to get out to America. Yeah. But you know, obviously I'd be remiss if I was saying we weren't writing, because we're, you know, as a band, you should always be writing something. But we, you know, with obviously the music's been out for a little while now, and we want to kind of continue that momentum. So you know, we are writing, and there's no immediate plans to go release anything yet, but you know, those will start to be those steps will start to be implemented very soon. But like I said, we've got a few big unannounced things yet, which will obviously not allow us to record and release anything within the immediate future. But yeah, expect something within the not so distant future.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. For the listeners, obviously, if you are heading to download the Wednesday night, you're this just under the headliners, aren't you? So you'll be on.
Yes, yeah.
What time? What time? Do you know what time you're on?
We haven't been into the set times yet, but I know that the opening band Andromedus is playing at 2 p.m.
Yeah.
So I think if you kind of count back every kind of 45 minutes, I'm sure we'll be on probably about 5 p.m.
Yeah.
Which I feel like is a decent time. It's allowed 5 hours of people setting up their tents and getting a bit wavy on some ciders.
Yeah. So yeah, head down. Obviously, keep an eye on our social media for the announcements that we can't make yet. And if you're in the London area at Christmas, get tickets for the Christmas gig.
Absolutely.
Sounds like it's going to be good. And go and check out the album. Thank you so much again for joining us on a lovely evening. It's been great chatting to you.
Thank you so much, mate. It's been a pleasure, and I'll see you at Download. I really look forward to meeting you.
Definitely. Well, thank you again, and take care.
Thank you, bud.